Welcome to the Mexpreneurs Podcast, the podcast about the stories of Mexican tech startup founders who are building world-class, fast-growing companies and having a positive impact at a large scale. My name is Sergio Chavez. I'm a Mexican based in Germany, a tech startup founder, executive, and mentor, and your host. Today we have Mario Hernandez with us. Mario is founder and CEO of IMPESA, a FinTech startup based in San Jose, Costa Rica. IMPESA is an innovator of electronic payment solutions for banks. Its flagship product, MoneyBite, allows business customers of corporate banks to manage and control the way their credit cards are used. Transactions over $2.7 billion have flowed through IMPESA's solutions. IMPESA has developed partnerships with leaders in the financial industry, such as Visa and PayPal. In addition to Costa Rica, the startup is present in 5 countries across Central America and the Caribbean, and it recently opened its Mexican branch as part of its international expansion. Mario is originally from Monterrey, Mexico. He then moved to Costa Rica, where he has developed most of his professional career. He had an outstanding corporate career as a banker, working at major financial institutions such as Scotiabank and Grupo LAFISE, the latter where he reached the top role of CEO. The complexity for banks to innovate and his fascination for tech led him to later start IMPESA. I hope you enjoy. Support for this episode comes from Skyflare, a cybersecurity company with a mission to make e-commerce safe for online shops and which currently protects dozens of Shopify-based businesses through its 360 degrees holistic protection. As an online shop owner, you know that every cent you spend in online advertisement counts, especially in Google AdWords. Therefore, keeping a tight control of your budget and the ROI are essential. Nevertheless, there are bad actors out there who can make those costs explode. Skyflare's Click Fraud Protection solution helps you prevent and resolve those threats. At Mexpreneurs, we had the privilege to have Skyflare's founders in the podcast, including Juan Ocampo, a Mexican tech startup founder, and Skyflare's Chief Operations Officer. Visit skyflare.com/Mexpreneurs to learn more and also to get a 10% discount during your first 3 months of your annual subscription. Skyflare is at the moment available in Europe, Mexico, and Canada through the Shopify App Store. Hello, Mario. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sergio. How are you? Thank you so much for the invitation.
And thank you, Mario, for accepting it and for being here today with us. So please, Mario, let's get started with a little bit from yourself. So please tell us, who is Mario Hernandez?
I want to say that I'm a banker. I've been in banking for 25 years. And the reason why I started banking is because I really enjoyed my first experience working for a small bank in Rhode Island while I was doing my graduate studies. Basically, this bank, during the time that I was there, went through, I want to say, 5 or 6 mergers and acquisitions. It was a small bank called Rhode Island Hospital Trust. And Rhode Island Hospital Trust was bought by Bay Bank. Bay Bank was bought by Bank Boston. Then Bank Boston was acquired by Fleet. And I think that Bank of America ended up acquiring Fleet. So back then, the internet was just starting. And the big thing was internet banking. And I remember that they gave you a diskette that you had to hook up to a computer, and you needed to hook up with your phone connection. And it was really, really interesting because during those mergers and acquisitions that the bank went through, you can imagine that you have to put together lots of databases and customers from different banks that had different technologies. And basically, I fell in love with banking, mostly the technology part of the banking. And then things started progressing with the applications and mobile apps and, where we are right now. It's just been an amazing, amazing journey. That's Mario Hernandez, the banker part. There's another part of me. I love teaching. I've been involved in teaching since I can remember. I'm a finance professor for Texas Tech University for the past 4 years. Before that, I was teaching a software related with banking, because this is another interesting part, which is I noticed that they don't teach you how to be a banker in college. They do teach you how to be a doctor. They do teach you how to be a civil engineer and sign blueprints for buildings, but they don't teach you how to be a banker. And there's lots of very, very technical things in banking. So I worked with a Stanford professor and I did the translation for the Stanford banking game. And I started teaching that here in Costa Rica and in Canada while I was living there. I have a big passion for teaching ever since I can remember. When I came back from Monterrey from college, I got involved in teaching, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. That's another part of me. And the other part of me, which is the most important one, I would say, is I'm a family man. I love my family. It is the reason why I do everything that I do. When you have a family that supports you and you have a passion for what you do, that's a great recipe for having a successful business.
And that's an incredible combination. So banker, teacher, family man. Those are already three big dimensions, three big aspects from Mario. And Mario, what I also found super interesting when you mentioned graduate studies in the US, you mentioned Monterrey, you mentioned Canada. It seems that you've been in multiple places. So can you walk us briefly through all of these experiences moving around? Like what led you to each different place? Because you've been in the move since early years, as I understand.
I was born in Mexico. My parents are Costa Rican, but they were studying at the Tecnológico de Monterrey. And I was born there. And I came to Costa Rica the first time, I believe, when I was like 3 years old. So that started my moving life. I've been moving everywhere during my whole life. I went to Monterrey to study my undergrad, manufacturing engineering. I love it there. I made amazing friends that I still keep in touch with very, very frequently. Every time I go to Monterrey, I meet with them. After Monterrey, I came back to Costa Rica and I was a manufacturing engineer. And I did what a manufacturing engineer did back then, which was work at a manufacturing plant. And I didn't like it. I was like, oh my God, why did I study manufacturing engineer? Hindsight, when I look backwards, it really provides you, the engineering part, it really provides you a very structured way of thinking. I just didn't like working in a manufacturing plant. So I went to Boston for my grad school. That's where I started working in banking. And as I mentioned before, I fell in love with it. After I graduated, I came back to Costa Rica and I started working in banking. I made a career in what was the largest private bank back then, Banco Interfin, which was bought by Scotiabank. And then Scotiabank promoted me and they gave me an opportunity to go to Toronto, to headquarters, and I worked there for 3 years. I had an amazing time there. It was a great experience, both professionally and from a family perspective. We really enjoyed and have amazing memories and very fond memories from back then. After 3 years, I was offered the opportunity to run a bank in Costa Rica, and I took it and I came back to Costa Rica. After 6 years of running this bank, I decided to become an entrepreneur. I started my company. This company has grown, and we can go into a lot more detail about my company. But basically, long story short, these past 6 months, we've decided to open up a subsidiary in Mexico, specifically in Monterrey. I've been traveling every other week to Monterrey. So I'm basically living in Costa Rica and in Monterrey in Mexico.
It looks like you're going back to your roots now also with the expansion into Monterrey.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I enjoy being there. Lots of conversations now that my kids are grown and two of them are in college. It's just me and my wife and my younger daughter. So we are in the process of moving to Monterrey, which of course is very easy for me because I'm Mexican. I have a Mexican passport. That's something that we're looking forward to from a professional perspective and also from a family perspective. It's going to be a different experience. We are really, really looking forward to it. Every time I go to Monterrey, I meet with friends, I find new business opportunities. The more I think about it, the more I ask myself, why did I not start in Mexico in the first place? Everything happens for a reason, but I think that we're doing it at the right time. This is a great time to be there. Our technology has become very, very scalable and mature enough to go to the Mexican market. So that's what we're looking forward to at this moment.
That's incredible. And of course, we're going to dive deeper into IMPESA also in your next episode. But also something that you mentioned that I would love to understand a little bit deeper, because you mentioned that you started as a manufacturing engineer, but then you switched to become a banker. How did that happen? So you deliberatively looked into a banking career when you were a manufacturer engineer? So like stumbled with that opportunity, somebody you knew was a banker already and brought you into banking? Like how exactly does an engineer ends up becoming a banker?
First of all, one of my bosses, he's an amazing guy. He's a civil engineer. He's one of the most amazing bankers that I've met in my life. I didn't look for it. All I knew was that I came back from Monterrey to Costa Rica and I was working in a manufacturing plant because that's what manufacturing engineers do. And I didn't like it. So I said, okay, I'm going to have to deal with it and let's see what happens. I know that I'm going to Boston in 2 years and let's see what happens. When I went to Boston, I had a couple of internships. One of them was with a chip manufacturing company. The other one was at the university where I started working with ISDN technology. I don't even know that exists anymore. But basically back then, ISDN was a type of technology that allowed you to have on one wire, you have three wires. One of them you used to push data, the other one you used to bring data, and the other one was for voice. So basically, what we did was you can do a video conference with ISDN because voice goes on these two channels back and forth, and then you have data, which is what we're seeing right now. And I fell in love with technology, and I started doing lots of research and researching everything that you could do on the internet. Keep in mind, this is 1996, 1997. 3 years before that, I was in Mexico, and my parents sent me letters because there was no email. Fast forward 2 years, 1997, the internet was just starting. And to me, this was just amazing. And I wanted to learn as much as I could about it. And when this third opportunity came up with the bank, they were such heavy users of technology that I said, okay, this is what I love. I ended up learning how to manage a bank and everything that has to do with financial intermediation and capital adequacy and all that stuff and risk management. But what really gave me this passion was the fact that banks used so much of the technology that was just starting to be created. That's basically what got me into banking. And out of those three opportunities, working at the telecommunications center at the university, working at the chip manufacturer, heat sinks manufacturers for chips in Rhode Island, and then working at a bank, I said, okay, I'm going to dedicate myself full time to the banking industry. And I really loved it since I started.
That's an incredible entry point. And yeah, I think also bank, as you mentioned, then later on with the internet banking, like it's gone through so many waves where technology has been really the underlying enabler of all of that big transition. We will be right back for a conversation with our guest. Support for this episode comes from Partnership Leaders, the leading community of partnership professionals and executives in SaaS and tech with over 1,500 members globally. We're living the decade of the ecosystem, and every CEO needs to become a partnership leader. Just take a look at the top companies in the world today like Microsoft, Google, and Apple. They have all become platform companies, and partnership executives in IT have been the ones leading these transformations. Partnership Leaders brings these executives together and is building a playbook to enable CEOs and business leaders across industries to transform their organizations into platform companies. If you're a tech startup founder, Partnership Leaders is the place for you to learn how to leverage partnerships to take your business to the next level. I'm a member of PL and co-host of the Germany chapter and have seen firsthand the richness and value of this incredible community. Visit partnershipleaders.com to learn more and to apply to become a member. Make sure to mention in your application that Mexpreneurs referred you so you can receive a special price if your application is accepted. But now, also another fascinating thing that you mentioned is you built I think a fascinating corporate career all the way into managing a bank in Costa Rica. And of course, I could imagine that you could have continued that path without any issues and even go beyond that. But you ended up deciding to go through the entrepreneurial route. So what exactly was that trigger? So why did you ultimately decide to build your own business and go through these rocky and full of ups and downs journey, which is being an entrepreneur?
There's 16 banks in Costa Rica, and bankers are always like prestigious people and very successful business people, and people look up to them. And when I was named CEO of the bank, I'm like, okay, I'm not sure if this is exactly what I wanted. And there's a reason why. This is 2014. And from my perspective, 2008, after the financial crisis, from my point of view, there were lots of changes in terms of things that the banks could do. If you go back to history, you can see how innovation, I don't want to say halted or stopped, but there's not a lot of innovation that came from banks since 2008, mostly because I would say the pendulum went too far to the risk side and the compliance side of the business running the banks as opposed to the innovation and the business running the bank. I remember a TED talk that I was invited to where I was in front of a lot of bankers and I said, guys, I remember when I was in banking and the commercial banker and the retail banker were the most important people in the bank. And from my point of view, that's not the case anymore. The most important person in a bank is the CTO because banks are software companies. And bankers don't see it that way. So 2014, I had an idea to control cards. That's how my company started. I wanted to make sure that fraud was somehow eliminated. You know, every time the credit card business came up with some new way to avoid fraud, then the fraudsters would catch up and keep on doing their bad things. I wanted to get rid of that. And there was a way from my perspective how to do that. And I said, well, I don't understand why a bank would give me a card that can be used in 190 or 100, 200 countries in the world. And I just live in Costa Rica. I want to be able to block that card so that I can only use it in Costa Rica. And then came the internet and my card was exposed, my whole credit limit to whatever the bank gave me. And I said, I want to make sure that I can use my card on the internet, but not for my whole credit limit, but just for my subscriptions to Netflix, to Spotify and stuff like that. So out of the $10,000 credit limit that I have, I just want to expose 500 to the internet so that I can use it on Uber and Netflix. So we created this technology and I started raising capital. This is 2014. So I was basically working like 18 hours a day because I was CEO of this bank. And at the same time, I'm running this startup company and I've raised a lot of money to start this company. In 2016 came a time where I said, okay, I'm running a bank, but I have a company that operates with 20 banks in 5 countries. I think it's, this is not sustainable. So I decided to leave the bank and become an entrepreneur somewhat later because I was in my mid 40s. Typical entrepreneurs are, in their 20s, 30s. But, I think everything comes for some reason and at the right time. And I think it was the right time. So that's how I became an entrepreneur in my late 40s, early 40s.
But it's also incredible. I think in my personal perspective, it's very romanticized about those young entrepreneurs that just go right out of college, go and start the next Facebook or Google or whatsoever. No? But at the end of the day, I think there's also a significant value on that experience, that professional experience. And I don't know if you would have found that business opportunity if it wasn't for that trajectory that you had before.
I think you raised a great point. Experience is really, really important. I don't think I would have been able to start this company without the banking experience that I had. I would have probably not been able to identify the need that existed and that still exists. The other thing is, like, when you look at my company today, we are the first Visa principal member issuer. So we're a fully licensed FinTech company with a Visa license. This is unheard of. I'm pretty sure that I would have not been able to get a Visa license without my experience, without my relationship with Visa. I had been working with Visa for 20 years. They knew who I was. They knew that I loved credit cards, that I knew payments, how to manage risk, how to manage banks, and they decided to give me the license. And I'm very, very grateful with this amazing company and all the people that worked there because they trusted me and my team and my company. And, they gave us a license. And today we are a big issuer for Visa and we're an important partner. And we've done amazing things with them.
And also, I think it's important to keep in mind that banking is still, I think, a traditional industry overall, no? Which I think it's hard for. Also, there's a lot of comments about like outsiders coming and disrupting traditional industries. But I think the fact that you know the industry in and out, it also provides a significant advantage to know who are the key stakeholders, what are the key things that moves each individual stakeholder. No? So I think it's that insider view that you've collected throughout these years. I think that's also an incredible asset for the type of business that you're building.
Yes. And I think that it's really important the fact that we speak the same language. So I can sit down with a banker and I understand where it hurts, like what problems you have, because I had those problems. How can we help? Bankers have lots of legacy systems, and it's really hard for a bank, for example, to innovate. Let me give you an example. Last year, we operate 100% Google Cloud, and we operate on a type of technology that allows us to move into production real time, basically. And if there's a problem, just roll back. Last year, I think that we did about 200 new software releases. When you go to legacy systems from banks or from processing companies, they tell you we make one new release every quarter. That's 4 in a year. That's 4 improvements. We make at least 2 improvements every single week. Like every week we improve something and we move new releases. So just the fact that a bank operates on different technologies, it's really hard for them to move to cloud. The fact that I speak the language allows me to really fast identify, okay, this banker is open to working with a fintech company. They know that we can help them. There's other bankers that say, no, we'll do it ourselves. We can do it. Yeah, I know that you can do it, but it's been many, many years and you haven't done it. So, and time is of the essence. I think that right now there's a big movement in the banking industry with some bankers that realize that they can work with fintech companies and that fintech companies provide the innovation that they can't produce. And the fintech companies also need the banks because the banks are, as you very well said, they have the reputation, they have a strong balance sheet. We can work together. That's basically what I've done. I work with the leading banks in Guatemala, in Dominican Republic, in Panama, in Costa Rica, in Nicaragua, and now in Mexico.
And of course, I'm really looking forward to our next conversation where we're going to dive deeper into IMPESA and all these great things that you're doing. But now, so you were mentioning about Mexico, and what I'd love to just know, so you've been living in Costa Rica, built a career in Costa Rica, but what is that connection to Mexico? You already gave us some hints, but what I would love is to learn from you. What is that connection to Mexico? How are you still contributing back to Mexico from Costa Rica? And also what's ahead in the following months?
Besides the fact that I love it there. I was born in Mexico. I went to school in Mexico. I have family and friends there. On top of that, if you think about the way we grew my company, every time I wanted to go to a new country, Guatemala, Dominican Republic, Panama, you have to start by getting all the permits. You have to start by getting all the government bureaucracy that you have to go through to operate. And then you go to Guatemala and you have a market of, I think it's like 15 million people, but out of which probably less than half are addressable market. And then the same thing with Dominican Republic, and you have to make a lot of effort. And then you go to Panama and it's 4 million people or 5 million people, and the addressable market is half of it. I go to Mexico and I have to go through the same bureaucracy that I went through. But now I have 140 million people, and the way to scale, it just makes all the sense in the world. I've been raising capital for my company for many years, ever since I started, because startups by definition can't grow based on debt. They should grow based on equity. So I've been raising capital. And, it came a point where the investors, very sophisticated investors in Palo Alto that I met with, and different places, Mexico as well, But they told me, Mario, where are you? And I said, well, I have a company, and I was very proud of it, and still very proud of it. But we're a company, principal member visa, and all these things, and we're PCI certified, and we work with the leading banks, and we're in 5 countries. Yeah, but are you in Mexico? No, we're not in Mexico yet. Okay, come back when you're in Mexico. That's because the investors want to see scaling up a company, and the way to scale up was, being in Mexico. So since November last year, I've been traveling pretty much every other week. I spend half of my time in Mexico, and I'm in the process of moving with my family to make sure that we can very, very successfully implement our software with one of the leading banks in Monterrey.
So Mexico is just going to become a more predominant part of you moving forward.
In our projections, we expect that in 3 years, just the fact that we will be in Mexico will make this company 4 times the company that we are today. That's a very, very conservative expectation, considering that just in Costa Rica, I think we have like 5,000 companies. So our market we have different products, but we're focusing on the commercial side. We have 5,000 companies. There's 650,000 companies in Mexico. You can do the math. We need to be there. So that's what we're working very hard. Everyone at the company is very aligned in terms of what we want to do, how we want to do it, and understanding that Mexico is really, really important for the future of the company.
And Mario, we're reaching the end of our conversation. So the last thing that I would love to ask you is about your best advice for other aspiring founders that are listening to us that would like to follow similar steps like you. I think there may be among our listeners probably some that have built a corporate career similar to yours that would like to go and build their own thing. What would be your best advice for them?
You asked me a very interesting question, I think, at the beginning, like what made me move from the safety of being the CEO of a bank to all the uncertainty of being an entrepreneur. That's a question that I've been asked many times. The more I'm asked that question, the more I think about it, and I never regret. Like, I never look back. I think that it's the best decision that I've made in my life from a professional point of view. I love what I do with all its ups and downs. There's lots of ups and downs, and but you have to be very persistent. One advice, I would say, it's never too late. Never too late. Don't get stuck with that romantic idea, as you well said, that an entrepreneur has to be in his or her 20s, 30s. There's lots of very, very successful entrepreneurs that became entrepreneurs in their 50s, 60s. One thing upsets the other, like, for example, the fact that you have a lot of experience in your 40s will probably offset the lack of experience that you have in your 30s. So I think that if you are in a corporate world, you can also figure out ways to become an entrepreneur, start some kind of company that will provide services to the company that you currently work for. So, that sort of opens up different ideas of how to become an entrepreneur. And I would say that one of the lessons that I've learned from raising capital is that you really have to scale up. And that's what most of the venture capitalists that will be funding your company will be looking for. So scaling up and fast is really important because investors want to see growth. So, make sure that you have identified what the market opportunity is and how fast you can deliver on that market opportunity, how fast you can grow, how fast you can make it happen, and be realistic on your expectations. Because on the other hand, you see entrepreneurs that promise a huge, amazing growth, and then they become a unicorn, and 3 months later, they're no longer a unicorn because everybody realized that, they cannot deliver on such growth rates. You have to be aggressive. You have to balance being aggressive in terms of growth, but being realistic at the same time. What we like to do here is under-promise and over-deliver. I think that's been under-promise, but with promises that are very aggressive, and under-promise and try to over-deliver most of the times. Scaling up is really, really important, and I think that Mexico in Latin America will be the market. It is definitely the best place to scale up your company, no doubt about it.
Those are a lot of great golden nuggets, Mario. Never start too late, scaling up, under promising. But I love the fact that you clarify. So, under promising, still with quite ambitious goals, but over delivering. So, thank you for that. Those are some fantastic takeaways. So, Mario, thank you very much for being here today. I'm very much looking forward to our next conversation. But in the meantime, all the best with this best move. And of course, we'll hear each other pretty soon.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe via your favorite podcast app to be notified about new episodes and share with us your feedback. We would love to hear from you. Thank you also to the Maxpreneurs team, Valeria Morel, Hector Barragan from Hypervoltage, Francisco Jaimes, Pamela Elizalde, Katia Cruz, Rocío Marroquín. I am Sergio Chavez. See you next time.